Oh, no P. Okay, where's the sword? Last week I got confused. Well, age-related degeneration. Yeah, yeah. Okay, am I on? Okay, good morning, everyone. Hi. Hopefully, some of the students that learned this is tuning in. So if Susan's tuning in, nice to see you. Hope you're doing well with this form. This is the Tai Chi Broadsword. Anyone tuning in for the first time would realize that this is a standard um, traditional weapon. It's called the Saber. It's done. It's the same sword that's used in traditional martial arts as well as Tai Chi. So the strokes and the slashes and some of the movements are similar because of the characteristics of the form. But then there's only so many ways you can slice and dice. So this is the way we do it. The sequence of Tai Chi is a little bit um, longer than most of the Kung Fu forms. But I have to say that the Tai Chi broadswords and the Tai Chi weaponry, overall, I think the complexity of them is more than a lot of the traditional arts because of the length of the forms. A lot of traditional Kung Fu styles have weapons, but they're kind of still short. Whereas with the weapons in Tai Chi, they're much broader and they're, in the sense that the movements capture a lot more of the combinations of movements. So I think I'm going to start off by going through the form first because sometimes we don't get enough time to go through the form. So we start off with preparation, and then we step up and turn the corner. We step up, grasp the sparrow's tail, and we turn. The hand goes down as if you're doing a brush knee. Then we sit back and we switch hands. Push up, 1, 2, pass through center, 3. Chop down, poke to the corner, sit back. And I call this pushing the sword. So just get a sense of that. Over the top. Okay. Uppercut, so you're slicing upward, turn, and stab with the blade facing up. Flip it down, flip the sword, pivot, stab to the corner with the sword inverted. In other words, the blade is. You're going to turn, kick up, switch feet, and poke down. Turn over the head, stab down, bring it to here, lift up, pass through center, chop down, and then we're here. Switch feet, stab down, turn, over the top, that's going over the neck, sit back, lift the knee, heel kick as you withdraw the sword, push the sword again forward, sit back, and then we're going to slice around. This is a waist cut. Step forward, over the top, undercut, pull back, and tee out. This is horse stance. Sit back, turn out, push the sword forward again. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. So this essentially is repeating that. This one slightly different action. It is 1, 2, that's over the top, and undercut. Now this changes a little. You have this upward movement as a big circle. Sit back and poke. Sit back and we push the sword forward again. Now we sit back. Shift the weight. This is the shuffle step that we typically have. I just did that as a step up, and Wu style, in the 24 movement, sorry. We're turning 180 degrees and we cut to the waist, cut in the opposite direction, over the top, go in, go up, chop down, and then we end up here. Sliding step, 1, 2, 3. So a lot of these transitions I had gone over in the last few weeks, in the last few months actually. It's gone by so fast that you can actually revisit those tutorials to find out how to make these transitions. Okay, now I sit back like this, retreat, turn over the top, cut to the waist, slice, cross behind, turn, and I'm here. Okay, I step forward, sit back, turn. I stab down toward the leg. I unweight, and I chop down, and I poke. And here we start the diagonal flying. That's done twice, and we sit back, and then the chicken nods its head with the footwork, and then we turn diagonal flying on this side, and we step up, and we put the sword here and squat down and divert. Take the sword behind, chop down again, and poke down. Sit back, push the sword forward, and chop. Sit back and turn. Step up, diagonal flying, sit back, poke, and poke. Now we sit back, okay, we chop to the right, slice to the right, we switch hands and move to the left. Then we move to the right again, and then we chop down. Stab, and we're in this direction, and we poke down, bring the hand to here, slice around, but then step backwards with the sword here. Okay, lift the knee, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1. Bring the hand to here, put it back, reset, brush knee, bring it hands down, turn to center, and we close. Okay, so you see the form's fairly long. There's some redundancy in the form, but the thing is, sequentially, it's pretty complex. There's a lot of transitions there that are not typical in many of the other broadswords that really are pretty simple compared to the intricacies of the directional movement and the mapping of the form. So what's really interesting is people that learn Tai Chi and they move on to something like an apparatus, they realize, the kind of coordination, the motor skill, the complexity of movement, this all really is a tremendous benefit for for muscle memory, brain plasticity, coordination. All of these things really, to my interpretation of prevention of age-related degeneration, is related to the motor skill that we develop. So, from the agility to footwork to the flexibility and the downward movements, and the dexterity of the sword going from the left hand to the right hand to the left hand to the way that you move your feet to the downward postures, the direction of movement. If you go to the downward posture, that's a challenging movement. When we shift our weight and we chop down, the coordination and the timing required to do these movements is, I think, pretty challenging for most people. Because I've been doing this for a while, it's pretty second nature to me. But the thing is, I realize that when people are first learning something like this, the challenge of knowing where your limbs are in the body position, to get the sword into a position where you have spatial awareness behind you, over the top, beside you, in front of you, alongside of you, angular direction down, level, to the side. All of these positions that your body actually goes through that probably most people don't pay attention to. So that's really the big benefit of doing apparatus. It's not only is it a challenge to learn it, but it's also, as you accomplish this, the aesthetics and the alignment of the body and the movements. It really, that extension is magnified tremendously from someone watching from the outside, but you can see that there is the alignment of the body because of the extension. If I'm like this, the extension of the movement, the alignment of the position, the control, the position, the center, the two sides going right and left. So these are things that become more apparent if I highlight them, and you can see that it's more than just memorizing a sequence. So you develop tremendous motor skill, which is something that I really think is one of the key things to prevent age-related degeneration and to keep the mind really fresh and occupied with new content or new information. Okay, so with that said, when we start the form off, we've done this a lot in the beginning, and then we've done some of the other movements. But when we get some of the other movements, such as those basic stabs and slices, but when we get to a position like this and we find a diagonal position, we should look for that alignment. So we have an alignment like this. We should practice that footwork where you're moving and you're building a coordination in the body where you step, 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 step. So you can do it just building that upper body relationship, and your body kind of does this. So really, there's a dimensional movement there. Your back and your core is actually expanding and contracting. So there's that flexibility, and then there's that integration of the upper and lower body. Is something that's very unique to these specific movements. When we chop over the top, we want to find the support. So where's the support? The support is your front leg. When you undercut, or you step up with the undercut, both of those should be a vertical slice running alongside the body that has to be tied to the way our shoulders are synchronizing with the movement, because our torso has to twist. So here's another benefit of doing these torso twists, because the lower back, this area of the back, the small of the back, are areas that really become weak and stiff as you get older. So we use the waist tremendously, because without the waist, you really can't create a lot of these movements. So turning the waist is not just turning your waist. Turning your waist is a motor skill. So to turn the waist, you have to program and teach your body that this is what it's supposed to do, specifically and voluntarily. When they call voluntary muscles, that means you kind of have to direct them. It might be involuntary when you tell them and it doesn't work. So most of the time the body doesn't cooperate with you because it doesn't know. So there's a step in learning something that requires coordination and control of something in your hand that you use your body to control. So that becomes, fairly complex as a training strategy. So when we stab, we take it from here and we end up there. So our hand, now this I mentioned before that because ergonomically this handle's curved and your wrist is curved, so they complement each other like that so you can get a vertical stab. But look at my wrist, it's higher and it's arched. It's not like this. So how you control your wrist and how it's articulated, it really supports the way the sword is really being directed. So when you slice, your wrist is actually like this. It's not straight. When you throw a punch, you align the back of the wrist. When you use a sword or a knife or something you require slicing, your wrist generally aligns this area of the hand, called the tiger's mouth, in line with your wrist. So this is with the sword. But if you're at home and you're using a knife or a cleaver and you're chopping in a direction, I want you to take note of where this area of your hand is relative to your wrist. It's going to be in line because your hand has to be like this. So when you use a hammer, when you use a knife, you have to have that angular position for you to create the alignment of your hand and forearm and your tracking of the movement. So when you chop, it has to be like this. Now, because we're chopping like this, our body is centered like this. If I'm chopping like this, our center is like this. So when we chop on the chopping board, your body has to be here. You never chop over here because your line of sight can't target the targeting place where the blade should be hitting. So that's usually, if you're cutting bones, you're aiming it at the joint. So large bones, you generally don't cut in the strongest part. You cut at the joint because the joint and ligaments are the places that you can sever much easier. So the same thing when we chop down like this, or we slice to the neck, or we slice to the neck, we go down like this and we poke. Our goal is really to have accuracy of movement and slice in a direction to get the most effect and the most accomplished. So really it's really functional. Now when we're doing these movements, one of the movements I think that would be difficult is when you slice around and then you step back. Okay, you see how this ending movement is. You cut around, you bring the sword behind you, and then lift your arm so the sword is behind you, and this hand comes up to here. We do the sliding step 1, 2, then we cross like this. The sword comes down to here, and we're going to slice down like that, right? So when we slice down like that, we want to slice under the leg, okay? So we're slicing under the leg, and then when the knee bends, the sword comes back. And then it goes down, and then it goes over the top and over. So that's probably only movement that I've seen in the Tai Chi form. I don't know of any other style that has that specific movement. But it's kind of unique that when you slice around and you go like this and you step 1, 2, 3, chop, lift. So that's actually poking someone. After you chop their legs, you're still poking up to wherever you're going. It's probably to the groin area. So you can just visualize how destructive that could be. When you slice down to someone's, chop the leg and then poke them in the groin and then chop them on the top of the head. It take it around like this and then slice the head off. That's kind of graphic, but that's kind of essentially what you're doing with the sword. So that's, even though it's Tai Chi and it's done in slow motion, it's still originally taught as a martial art. So that's a slice, that's a left-handed move. Not a lot of weapons do left-handed movements. Tai Chi actually has several of these transitions. Another one is a chop down like this. That's chopping over and stabbing. So you have to practice. Chop and over. So here's your center line. You go over the top. You chop and poke. So you chop in the stance. You poke. So you have to coordinate the hand and the legs, and then you sit back. So this is neutral. This is vertically down on your center line. This is horizontal, and this is vertical. Okay. So between here and here, here. Now when the sword is here, you see the blade is facing outward. Okay. So if you see the movement that goes like this, and the hand is here, and we're moving, what is that? That's protecting your spine. So if someone to chop or swing something toward the back, your hand is here to protect your spine using the edge. So if someone came around, at least you have something to protect the vertical line, and there's your spine. And then you unleash from the top. So really, a lot of the positions are set up as support. When you go like this, you don't have a whole lot of force or power in a direction. So you need this hand to help support it, to push. So if you can imagine, if you're going to cut up and sever a person in half from the bottom up, you need to push and then cut up. You see that? So that's kind of graphic, but the thing is, you have to imagine what your blade is doing in order to be able to capture the direction of movement and have it to work efficiently. If I take it over the top and I come up, this is much more natural as a slice up till it gets to here. This doesn't work as well, even though we have one movement that chops up, until you step up. So this is a slice, and this is a chop. So you have vertical down, vertical up, right and left, slice to the right, slice to the left, and so forth. So really, there's a lot of directional changes in the form. See, another movement that actually is sort of challenging is this. When we poke down here and we lift the body. Now, see, this is 45 degrees. That's in that corner. This is over here. So when I go like this, I slice up, I do that. So the footwork, when I'm here, is lifting. Lifting. Now when I lift, what happens? Lifting is unweighting. So if I go like this, one, and I lift, it allows me a split second to pivot. Now if I just did this, I actually can't get this foot around without actually doing this. So that's a sensitivity thing and a transition where you actually will go from this position, boom, to this position here. So we also have it here, but this one we pivot like this. See, when I'm here, when we stab, one, and then watch my feet. Stabbing, pivoting, chopping. So this is, if you see the blade is parallel to the floor, horizontal, or chopping down. So in the horse stance, you'd be like this. This would be like this, and then you poke. Or you can go further down, depending on your intent of the movement, and then you draw back and poke. So I'm here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you see, footwork is taking you in the direction. If I'm in that corner, I pivot to here. Or I shift in this corner. Instead of stopping here, I switch into the horse stance, and we're like that. If I'm in this corner, here, and you notice this hand is by the forearm. So this gives you, and you look at where it is. It's on my center, you see? And then I go like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is the transition more than 1, 2. That spinning is time. So you have both going up. So that gives you something to work on to build the coordination and the sampling of that. So that's really some of the challenging movements. The diagonal flying movement, there's a little bit of footwork there too, as when we're switching like this, you switch, so the footwork is like this. You see what we're doing is 1, 2, rise and fall, rise and fall. Remember, in last class I mentioned that when you do the diagonal flying, you don't want this hand to be underneath because it's very risky and it's dangerous to put your hand on. So in diagonal flying, we're here and we have the hand on top. Whereas when we do the diagonal flying without the sword in the hand is underneath. So there's this difference there mainly because of the apparatus that you're holding. A typical diagonal flying, you're here and you hold the ball and your hand would be like this, you see. So the hand is underneath. In this case, the hand is above. Okay, so you want to make that distinction, especially when you have something in your hand like this, because you just don't want to be crossing at the wrong place. So the other thing that happens that where it's critical is when you go over the head, you want to put the hand on the inside of the blade. So when you go over the top, you have this opening here. You don't go over the top and then leave your hand there again, just like in the diagonal. When you go over the top, you want to come through your center, through that hole that you've created here. Because when you go over, you see this opening here. Go inside and then bring it down like that. So that's important. If you don't do it like that, you might end up, injuring yourself or maybe cutting your arm here. So that's a liability. If I didn't tell you, it's probably a liability anyways. But the thing is, make sure you practice weaponry safely and understand why you do certain things a certain way. So this movement goes over, you go underneath. This goes to the outside, and then you chop. Now when you go to the outside, it goes here, and you slice around. So you really need to understand that when we slice, it's on the outside. When we go like this, it's on the outside. When we go over here, it's on the inside. So you can work at home if you have a mirror, if you have a sword. If you don't, you can actually use a piece of a broomstick or something like that. So a lot of times you just have a short dowel, maybe about 40 inches, and you can just make a handle and do that. Now if you're interested in buying a weapon like this, you can actually go on Amazon and do a search, and you can probably find them. I sometimes order weapons for students, and then I bring them in. But that's not something that I would be doing for people, online. So if you're streaming and you just do a search. You can find these weapons with different dealers. So sword suppliers or martial arts suppliers. I can't endorse anybody that I can recommend, but you can actually do it yourself. Amazon does have them, and they work with some of these suppliers. So with that said, just if you're planning to learn it, purchase one and practice. Get one that's not too rubbery, and the more rubbery they are, the softer they are, and the lighter they are. So anyways, on that note, that's the end of the class. Thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks.